I'll teach you something.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So today's podcast is going to be a little bit different. We took a break the last week or so for a couple reasons. I think partly the same reason that a lot of people took a break from social media, just to amplify Black voices and let other people be heard in every media space. So I won't get super into that, even though it's really important, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We have another kind of little bit of fact, a little bit of opinion topic to talk about. And it's sort of like I would say it's kind of a blend of topics that all kind of go back to one thing that just super bothered us this past week or two. And a couple of it's a couple topics, but a lot of people are talking about this, and some people may know nothing at all about it. So I was going to have sort of a topic of my own, and Mike was going to have his own topic, but I think we all sort of settled on this goes right to the same place. And so I was going to talk about the strange phenomenon of rehoming children. Yeah. And so the reason that I was going to talk about that is because we watch YouTube. We follow a lot of YouTubers. We don't follow family YouTubers. It's just not our thing. But, you know, I have had a YouTube channel for a while. Not one that I use a whole lot, but a little bit. And I started recently too. And I've noticed that there's a couple of changes to how YouTube works. So this podcast is going to cover a few things. One is rehoming children and the sad realities of that. The other is YouTube and how it plays into this whole thing. And then we're also just going to have a little chat about social media in general. So I'll give a small background on what started this whole topic for us, as the baby has his morning
Yes.
his morning little coughs. So essentially on YouTube there's a lot of vloggers who do daily family kind of vlogs. They involve their children are in the videos, but unfortunately sometimes the children become the topic of the videos. Parenting and like follow our entire lives, kind of like reality TV on YouTube, but it's like a lot more real. The consequences for the kids, I would say. The lifestyle's not real at all, but the consequences are real. So there's a YouTube channel called The Stauffer Life, as well as Stauffer Garage and Mika Stauffer. And she is an American woman who essentially has a family, and a few years ago she adopted a little boy from China who had developmental disability of some kind. It has been referred to as autism. I've also seen reactive attachment disorder thrown around. And so that being said, from what I've seen in the last couple of weeks, like, this child doesn't look like, you know, the thing about it, you know, you can never really make an opinion about somebody else's child or their life or what they're dealing with, and I certainly wouldn't try to do that. But what I can say is that there's a little bit of light that gets shed when someone vlogs their entire life. You actually can do a little bit of a case study watching hours upon hours of their lives. And
that's what a lot of people did.
You know, this has been like completely just researched and racked through social media, and on YouTube like crazy. And so this little boy, he doesn't seem like he's extremely, I would say, high needs. But that being said, he's not my child, and I can't make that assumption. But I can say flat out that what has happened here disgusts me completely. So this little boy was the topic of their videos for years, 2 years, I believe. And I'm like trying to collect the words here. Like, so basically, until, they just decided he was too much work and he was too much of a problem, and he just disappeared from their videos. So people started to ask questions like, where is this child? And his name is Huxley. That's the other sad thing, is that his full name is out in the media. It's like out in public. Hopefully he gets a name change, because they have claimed that they have rehomed him, that they took it upon themselves to treat him like, an unwanted pet, and they just rehomed him because they couldn't handle his needs.
Yeah.
So I can, I always try to see someone else's perspective. I do. I struggle with this one because I feel like, when you're a YouTuber making millions of dollars, okay, this child has been the topic of their videos. He's the reason they are millionaires. And he has afforded them extraordinarily fancy cars. Like, she has like a $7,000 bracelet on, and like most of her videos, they are loaded.
They crowdsourced the money to go to China to adopt this child.
Exactly. And see, that's the part of the background that disturbs me the most. Also, a doctor told them, like their family physician, when they were considering this adoption, he looked at whatever profile they were given of this child, and they told them, like the doctor told them, probably based on his depiction of their family in his mind from being their doctor, like, don't do this. It's going to be too much. Don't do this adoption. But she specifically ignored him, and she said that it went in, and I quote, one ear and out the other. So they made a choice, like, it's from the adoption kind of videos that I've seen. There was a really lovely, like, woman and daughter, where the daughter had been adopted from China, and they did sort of a YouTube reaction video, which we'll get into later. About, adoption and being adopted from China and doing adoptions. And she said, the thing about when you do an international adoption, right, is you can ask to be placed on sort of like the good kid list, meaning these children haven't been identified as having any kind of emotional or developmental problems. So that can be sort of the primary list that you sign up for, or you can say, I will take a child with some degree, but not a major degree of developmental problem, or I will take any child. So she was talking about how she chose kind of like the good kid or whatever, the kid who doesn't have any prescribed issues, and that when they picked up their daughter, they were with a group of other people who were picking up their children, and it was supposed to be the kids that didn't have issues, but like you could tell almost immediately, and even their daughter had major issues, because it depends where you're getting children from, but I would say in any case that there's some degree of trauma or what have you when a child is removed not only from like their family, but also from their country, their language, their culture, all those things, right? So you're going to get a child who, at least at first, is going to need work, therapy, care, unconditional love, all those things that every kid needs, but a lot more. So yeah, it's quite a topic, and whew.
Yeah.
You're so quiet. I keep talking.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing just astounds me that, it was allowed to go on this long,
Yeah.
And they posted a reaction, or they posted a video explaining how they rehomed.
Yeah, this is why Huxley's missing from our videos. So they posted a video basically just, saying in this, almost like, I don't know, like charitable way that this is the best for him. And he told us that he wanted to go, that this is what's for him. Okay, so this is a kid who...
That's 4 years old?
He's 4, yeah, he's 4. He's nonverbal. He sort of tries to do sign language. From what I can tell, like, and like I there's going to be some things that I say that are wrong in this podcast. Trust me, it's probably more emotional than factual, but no, there are some facts here. So
Yeah.
when I look at the videos and stuff, it's almost like they adopt him, and he doesn't get any kind of like English language or any other sort of like therapy that he would need to be able to succeed anyhow, or that any kid would, regardless of a developmental disorder. Like, he's treated like he should be able to talk, and he should be able to communicate in English, and he should have some idea how to socially become a part of a family that has other kids. And
Yeah,
you know,
4 other kids.
yeah, well, she ended up having one after him, and that is what most people are saying was probably the trigger for them getting rid of him, because, their plate was too full, which I get, but why? I mean, why, other than needing a reason to be looked at like some kind of a saint, would you adopt this kid? It's like this savior kind of mentality, of course.
And it just boggles my mind that you can just rehome an adopted child.
So
Like, there's no laws against it.
that is a very, very good segue into what, like, I wanted my topic to be about, was
Yeah.
rehoming children. So both in the United States and in Canada, rehoming children is legal. There are variances between states and provinces about how that can be done, but honestly, on the most part, especially with internationally adopted children, it is not followed, it is not regulated in any way. So just the general condition of adopted children from other countries, it's not regulated or followed. Like, there's no like CPS or whatever that like checks on the welfare of these kids. Nothing. And like, the problem is, there's not only private adoption agencies of like varying degrees of honesty and professional credit. There's also just people who are calling themselves like private adoption services. They're dealing literally in child trafficking. Like,
Yeah, that's basically what this is. It's like, if
I mean,
you're allowed to
this,
do this.
yeah, this case is actually one of those, because they went through not an adoption agency, but like, it was a private adoption that was facilitated by just people. I don't know the qualifications of these people.
And no one knows the specific details.
No.
There's been no sightings or news reports. I mean, this story has gotten national and international attention.
Like, so at the end, like, what really bothers me about this is we don't know where he is. So they claim that they have adopted him out. He's been rehomed, and we still don't know where he is. The local sheriff's department or whatever has some investigation, and they said that he's not a missing child, but like, I have not seen an update in like a month. This kid has been out of their house since, I believe, January, and no update on where he is.
Yeah. And it's
so
and it's weird, because they spent their time building this channel with this adopted child, with Huxley.
yeah.
And basically they received the most viewership, the most subscription during that time. And, as they were trying to do their lifestyle family channel with, what are they doing? Homeschooling and all these other things.
I mean, but like, a lot of it is literally just like mommy blogger type stuff, where she puts way too much of her children's life on the internet. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not one of these people who believes like, oh, like, I believe in autonomy, and I believe we need to be careful with social media, but I'm not going to flip out on you if you post pictures of your kids so your family can see them and that kind of thing. Or I don't have a huge problem with it. I think if it's managed well, it's fine. But like, I am not a fan of parents who put things like their children having a meltdown, or their children receiving some kind of discipline, or having a problem. You don't put that online. That's not your like emotional situation to share. It's not just you in the situation, and you don't have consent from your children to be sharing that kind of information. And it's like public humiliation, like, he sucked his thumb, so she duct taped his hand so he wouldn't suck his thumb. You see their other children all suck their thumbs, and like one even has like like her teeth are very forward pointed, and they have a video where they're talking about being worried about her teeth. It's like, why is like it's okay for their kids to do it and it's not okay for him to do it? It's just thumb sucking. Some kids do it. Yeah. They'll grow out of it, relax. But I mean, the big problem though for me is like, you don't publicly humiliate your kid and make that the topic of your YouTube channel, make millions of dollars, and then when he no longer serves a purpose, you throw him away like trash. And like, that's what I feel has happened here.
Oh, totally. And yeah, they've make no mistake that they've made a lot of money,
and a lot more people have. So I know that we're talking about this and sort of, I mean, we're a little bit behind the rage of it. Like there's been, if you're following this, you have heard it from probably 100 YouTube channels.
It's been out for weeks.
I also want to say that this podcast is not currently monetized. So anything that we are talking about right now, we are not being paid for. But I think that that's a secondary problem with this, is that not only has this kid's family made money off of his whole horrible situation, now we have all these other YouTubers who have their own kind of hot take on the situation. They're using the topic
to monetize
to
their
grow
own
their
videos.
channel. Like, we've watched one channel that just was created, like, on YouTube over the past, I'd say, 2 weeks to a month, just grow to crazy, like, proportions. Hundreds of thousands of subscribers and, millions of views on their videos where they're just talking about this situation.
Yeah. And some of them have inside scoops. They know the neighbors of these people. They live in the same state, which I believe is Ohio.
Yeah, they're reaching out to, they're, getting in touch with different people to try to get insider information. So I'll just basically provide a little bit more around the concept of rehoming and the problem that it has been on the internet. So I should say, like, the majority of international adoptions, they do follow proper procedures. But for years, there were message boards on sites such as Yahoo and Facebook that have housed an underground community of desperate adoptive parents and willing takers for kids in this adoption rehoming practice. So this existed even before those social media, because like Yahoo Groups is, I don't even think, is it defunct now? But
probably. Using it, it's like really old.
It used to be a thing, but also it's existed on Kijiji, Craigslist, all these different places. But it really thrives in a format where someone can have a group, a private group where, they can have conversations. And so actually, back in 2005, in Canada, we had our own kind of situation with this. The Fifth Estate, which is an investigative research TV show that is created, I think, is it CBC? It's on the CBC.
Yeah.
So they did, in 2005, they did a documentary called A Boy Named Moses, and it was about Moses Gilbert, who was adopted from Liberia in 2005 by a couple in Castlegar, BC, and they later gave him to a woman in Texas that they had never met. They just chatted with her, I believe, on Yahoo Groups, and her name was Ambrosia Marvin. She was a single mother and a part-time teacher. So it was a Yahoo group. So she said there were groups for everything under the sun. People who like classic cars, who fly airplanes, all these different groups. And so there was a group for people looking to rehome their children after disruption. So an anonymous tip to the BC Ministry of Children and Family Development alerted them to the fact that Moses was missing, and then social workers filed a court order, and after 3 months, Moses was returned to Canada. So every city, province, and country has differing rules about adoption, rehoming, and the transfer of children. This was originally designed as a poverty provision, allowing parents to sign their children over to trusted friends or relatives if they were sick or they had a financial hardship. But in Canada, there is no uniform requirement for adoption agencies to follow up with children adopted from overseas, which means that kids can fall through the cracks really easily. There are loopholes in provincial custody transfer laws to allow parents to give away their children through public forums, such as online message boards, without any screening or oversight. They happen outside of the system to protect kids. And so, yeah, like there's been a woman named Mary Ellen Turpin-Lafond. She's a BC representative for children and youth, and she's been a longtime critic of the system. All of the research that I did on this, her name is mentioned. Like, this woman has been crusading on this topic, saying she's got very, deep concerns, and she's been quoted many times as saying, like, this is just another fancy term for trafficking in children. So there was a Reuters investigation in the US last year, actually, that found 5,000 messages online about rehoming children, and it dated back 5 years ago. So in the last 5 years, there's been 5,000 messages. And they also found on one Yahoo group, a child was being offered up on average once a week for 5 years.
That's terrible.
Yeah. The investigation also found that most of the kids did end up in homes that seemed better equipped to care for them, so little light there, but some wound up in situations of exploitation and abuse. And I honestly think, like, nowadays that might be a little bit worse. It seems worse. I don't know if it's just one of those things where now we're hearing about it because we have social media, but I sort of feel like the trafficking of people in general has gotten worse.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's like, with no oversight, there's no telling what is happening.
Yeah.
Or what's going on with children that are being rehomed at all.
So while it is legal to, quote, rehome children within Canada, I just can't get used to that term, it's illegal to send them across the border without proper procedures. So since this Reuters investigation, which actually won a Pulitzer Prize, Yahoo has shut down its rehoming message sites. Other internet chat rooms apparently still allow them, though they've moved further underground and are now harder to access. There was, like a couple years ago, there was a conversation about regulating rehoming in the U.S., Congress held a hearing on the matter like 2 summers ago, but there's been no progress. So Canada and the US have a lot of work to do on this. So that being said, I think we've kind of covered the specific sad personal story that is this Stauffer case, and I truly hope that this child is found and he's put in a place where he's loved and he's getting everything he needs, because he really has had enough upset in his short life already. So I really, really hope that that's what happens. So I don't know, do you want to swing toward YouTube now and talk about YouTube? YouTube is basically obviously it's a huge, massive video site.
It's a huge platform.
And I guess my criticism here comes from, I love YouTube. I think it's an amazing outlet to let people make videos, but I think that they're a little bit, both Google and YouTube have some work to do about being authentically protective of children. So,
they are not.
They aren't. And what bothers me more is that they're trying to be. It's almost like greenwashing, though. So a few years ago, there was a lawsuit that basically they were found in, that they weren't complying with COPPA in the United States, and they basically had to pay a $170 million lawsuit against both YouTube and Google. It was alleged that both of them illegally collected personal information from children, which is in violation of COPPA. According to the complaint, the companies collected information from viewers of child-directed YouTube channels in the form of persistent identifiers that track users across the internet. So they were collecting data, essentially from kids who are using their parents' devices to watch videos. They develop the trending and the data from that. They collect that data. They center advertising around it. They sell that data. So basically that's what became the big hullabaloo was like, oh, you're not getting consent. You can't get consent from children to capture their data and sell it. How dare you? You know, what a violation. So then what they had to do is they had to put in place this, like, when you try to upload a video now, you are asked, is your video directed at children? Yes or no? So you answer, you check that little box if it is. If not, you move on your merry way. And I guess that the concept is that, like, if you've checked that, that basically eventually what they've talked about is that those videos will not be allowed to be monetized. Now, here's the trouble with this, okay? So it's a two-sided problem. Number one, the video directed at children, or are children going to watch it anyhow? It doesn't matter if your videos are directed at children, and it's creating this unfair thing that does nothing to protect children. So it's like you have creators who have channels where they have their children doing toy reviews. They're massive, humongous, multi-million-dollar families with huge channels with millions of subscribers. They headline YouTube events. It is well known what that is. It is a child with their parents where the child is the host of a show and they are doing toy reviews.
Yeah.
I would say that that content is watched by both adults who like family vlogging as well as children who like watching toy reviews. Although a lot of adults like watching toy reviews as well.
Yeah.
So you could say that that's directed at children, but the bigger problem is for the child who's doing all of this work, because that's what this is. It's work. You're creating videos. There are laws that apply to child labor, and
Yes,
you know
child performers.
there are major concerns about like what's going on with how these kids are being treated. That they're working like a full-time job. Being a YouTube creator and being a huge one at that, like you want to build your YouTube presence, you've really got to work. You've got to make videos at least once a week. That's editing, that's performing, that's recutting things, that's, you know, doing things like buying toys to review. Like, there's a lot of work. And I think that it's also like a window into a life that, like, I don't think we all should have access to. Like, what if one of those kids got leukemia or was kidnapped? Or, like, how do you justify this having your kid out there? Like,
Yeah.
it's weird.
And that probably gets to the point that I really wanted to talk about, is that the fact that we use social media in such weird ways, you know, especially with all the stuff that's going on politically right now, you know, I'm seeing the impact of social media both in the most positive light and both in the most negative light.
Yeah.
You know, we share very honest and very real things in social media that causes uproars, that causes protests, that causes all these things. We also create...
that hopefully causes change.
Yeah, that hopefully causes change. And then hopefully, you know, we also have people that share, you know, little things, you know, or things that people are dismissive of, you know, that are so... people think that are so pointless, like a toy review video. Okay, but... you know, these families that are making these toy review videos, especially the one that I know you're kind of intimating, they're getting 6 million views on their videos.
Yeah.
Average. 6 million views, they're easily making, depending on how they monetize the video, not including what they're sponsored for,
well,
they're making over $50,000 to $60,000.
Absolutely. So the video that the Stoffers made about rehoming their child, it's been estimated that it made $50,000 so far, and it's now been set to private, but it had gone on for a long time, like continuing to make money even after a police investigation had been started.
Yeah.
So, and now we have all these other YouTubers that are off shooting and making money off of this kid.
Exactly, and it's like you have all these YouTube reaction videos, which is a very popular kind of format, the topical format of basically hundreds of people saying the same things
over and over. Oh, like, you know,
just, and reacting to the one video. So the Mika Stauffer video, the reaction video to that. Universally, I would say the videos that we watched and that we saw all are saying, like, you know, this is bad.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any video that came
No,
out that
but
defended.
now we have every single angle. Like we've got people saying, that she's a narcissist, and they go into a deep dive. Like it's unnecessary content when all we really need is a police investigation and rules that actually protect children on YouTube. Like in a major thing I've noticed, like there's been another case where there was a family who had, I think, 4 children, 5 children, and they found behind the scenes like all was not as it appeared. These children were being starved. They were working hours and hours. Yeah, and there's another very popular video series that comes to mind. I won't specifically name, but let's just say it's a really popular song that a lot of little kids love. And these people make animated videos, and they've made hundreds of them. And I've seen their children kind of grow up on YouTube. But when you look in these kids, like imagine, you see children dancing and singing along actually to a language that they don't even speak. And they do multiple language videos, and it's the same songs that are sung in all these different languages. But like you look at them and like their eyes look dead. Like they seriously look dead. And yes. I wonder truly how many takes, how much dancing and singing, the amount of, they have their own toy series, they have their own app, they have, it's like, what's the end game of all this? For these kids, they're not going to stay. This isn't like Peter Pan. They can't stay this age forever. So when will enough money be enough that these kids like just get a break?
But this is the thing. The money will never be enough.
That's the problem that I feel too.
And it's like this is the thing. The platform itself, YouTube, does not care up or down about what's being shared. Unless it's something that's total crimes.
Yeah.
Okay. But even then, they'd probably still share it or have reaction videos to it. Any video that is made out of that's generating views, they're making money off of.
Absolutely.
And so are the content creators that are monetized.
Absolutely.
And, it just creates this, basically, they call it the algorithm, of this YouTube algorithm of where the type of content kind of gets aggregated in a certain way for people to watch, because YouTube itself wants to push the most viewed content to the people that are going to view it, because they're going to watch the ads. They're going to get, the monetization of ads. The more views they get, the more money they get. You know? So it's like it just generates this thing where you just have, these things like the Mika Stauffer case, and you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reaction videos, and you basically devoted, probably combined, over, hundreds of millions of views on this kid's life or whatever's happened to him, and this universal hatred towards this one family.
And I mean, and that's obviously not what we're here to do. Like, I should probably mention, please don't send them any hate. Like, again, we don't know all the inside facts about this. We know a bit. We know enough to be upset, but we don't know everything. And even if we did, do not go and add hate to this fire, because at the end of the day, really it's just a little boy and his life.
To child welfare, but just in general to like good media versus bad media, and the kind of world that we're building with technology is that there's a lot of people that are pouring a lot of effort into creating real content that is not directed at children but is family friendly, like like channels that do crafting and DIY and animal type content or whatever, like something that like a family would enjoy watching. The largest number of these creators are actually women in the art and craft spaces, DIY spaces, creative like comics, toy collecting, those kind of spaces that sort of can blend the lines. And like it's really annoying to me that YouTube has, because of this COPPA settlement, those channels have been basically defunded, like what's the word, like demonetized, because they figure kids are watching them and so they can't be putting ads in them. So it's like really annoying that a lot of really great YouTubers and even people who are just building a channel to try to have a presence, they're not going to show up in the algorithm, or they're going to have their channel demonetized because of this surmised risk that YouTube has about kids. But like, they allow family bloggers where literally the topic of their whole channel is their family, and typically this just is right around their children. They wouldn't have a channel if they didn't have children. And you top that with the problem that YouTube already has with all of these weird channels that are from places like Russia, and they have like hundreds of channels and thousands of accounts, and they generate all of these like totally dangerous, in some cases, BS videos that are like creating like 5-minute crafts, and like it's like a lot of times very dangerous, like the ones they do for like the cooking recipes that don't work. And there was even a girl who tried to like create like a little what was it? It was like a fire,
like
an alcohol fire inside a soda can to try to make popcorn, and like it exploded and she died, like in Asia somewhere. And there's a lot of cases of things like that, of people getting hurt, or just people like going through the process of trying to do or make something, and it's either dangerous or it fails, and it's very frustrating. And they upload the same videos again and again and again, and they get all these hundreds of thousands of views.
They get millions of views.
And so it's like it shuts down. Like when you search for something, like say you're looking for, how to make a candle. When you search, or even if you look under just crafts in general, the first several pages of the YouTube page will be these channels. And there's no visibility at all to the people who are actually creating content. And like I said, a large number of those people are women. And so that's the other side of this with YouTube that bugs me, is that like their concern about kids is contrived.
Oh, totally. And the thing of it is like the whole time they're making money. Like they demonetize creators, yet they still run advertisements on their, videos.
They keep your video, so it's obviously not that concerning to them that kids are watching it.
Yeah, exactly. And they keep making money. Like, it's not about protecting children at all to YouTube. It's about, still being able to advertise. Like, we watch shows, on YouTube, or creators on YouTube who have targeted advertisements that are targeted to, like, children.
Yeah, I mean, like they, and like you have a kids channel, and all the advertising is toy commercial, sort of like all entirely like toys. Some of them are like these full length, 30-minute like
how-to videos. With
they're
certain products,
infomercials with children hosting, children doing the making, and it's a specific product. Like, hey, a DIY make your own slime kit or something. Like. Yeah. So who's that targeted ad for? Slime enthusiasts?
Yeah, it's just crazy to me.
Fans of the 90s TV show, you can't do that on television?
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy to me how the face of media has changed so much. And especially like, the impact it's having right now in the current political, cultural climate. We've always knew like people have lost their jobs over something they've said over social media, but more so now than ever, especially with people basically exposing themselves as racist online.
A lot of it's warranted.
Yeah, is very warranted, and depending on whatever company they work for and their policies, they are being pressured even more so today to hold these people accountable.
And I mean, I think that's kind of a bit of a light in the use of social media. I mean, I think it can be dangerous, and I think it's just getting, it's in its like infancy stages of how, social politics, ethics, things that you're captured doing on a device. I think we're in the infancy of how that can affect people's daily lives. Like, I think that's that's a new thing, and I think it's being used for some degree of justice, thankfully. But I'm also worried about how it can be abused. We'll wait and see on how that pans
Well,
out.
I mean, I would sort of disagree because I mean, this is I mean, you and I, we both grew up with dial-up modems and the internet. Like, I remember when Facebook first started, and everybody in the library at my university was on their Facebook profile. And I totally remember that moment in time, and that was before MySpace. I had a MySpace account before that.
I know.
Yeah.
You're ancient. We know.
But I just remember when it was just this fun little platform to share your ideas and invite your friends to a party
And that's
or
when
a
it
show.
was in its infancy. And, like, I don't know, arguably, I think before the pandemic started, like, the internet has become like a trash can. I'm so bored with it. It's like the only website it has is Facebook and maybe Twitter and, like, what else? Instagram. And that's just all influencers. Like, it's like people taking selfies. I mean, I don't not appreciate my contacts, my friends that do contribute to all those platforms, and I do feel like it helps keep me in their life a bit, but it also helps keep me out of their life, because, like, why call them when I just saw that they just did something online 5 minutes ago? Like, I already know what's going on with their life,
See,
so
I felt the same way when I wrote blogs back in the day online, and people would read your blog, like your online diary, your journal, and people would say, "Oh yeah, I already know about that." Like,
So-
you're trying to bring it up in conversation, and they're like, I already read your
I
post.
think you wrote a blog a little differently than most people. At least definitely differently than I did.
Yeah.
I wrote a blog online mainly for both myself and trying to just play with, like, the internet, like, learn rudimentary web design and what it was all about, as well as, like, meeting new people. I wasn't telling most of the people that I knew in my everyday life about my online presence, because honestly I was probably bitching about them, like, not my friends but like my coworkers, definitely back then. So it's like I didn't use it that way, but I don't know if most people did.
Well, I mean, the site was called Diaryland, so I wrote it in like a
So
diary.
you wrote like a public diary.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone leaves their diary out on their dresser for their mom to read. Like, nice one.
No, but I met people through that. I met you through that, so I don't discount it at all. But, like, I think there was a weird personality of having your own persona online early on in the internet when we first had a good taste of the internet, and now it's become something totally different. When you post stuff about yourself online, you have these ideas of these people that are called influencers who, hawk products, and, like, they take pictures and opportune times.
They show their contrived existence where they stop at the beach for 5 minutes, take a picture, and
but
then
they never set foot
tell
on the
the
beach.
world how great their day was.
Yeah, how great their beach day was, or
Yeah.
whatever. And or they get in front of a Black Lives Matter protest, take a picture holding up a quickly handwritten sign, and then walk away, and then go about their day, obviously doing something else,
Yeah.
but not being a part of the action at all, and then maybe they had to take a picture of their food for the day or something.
Which doesn't offend me. I'm fine with food pictures. I don't like to, jump on people's, like, whatever makes you tick, whatever makes you happy. But unless you're hurting someone, or you're just being a generally obnoxious person, like,
But, I mean, the thing of it is social media is so intertwined in our lives now that there are social rules that are coming up, and there's social faux pas that are coming up in there, and then there's obviously very real consequences of, like, social retribution for people that have, it's being weaponized to people that are being very racist or doing something
I mean,
I would say quite often stupid.
It may or may not be being weaponized, but it's there. If we think about something like how, Britain with CCTV, you don't do a whole lot without being seen. And I think that honestly, in some ways that's a good thing, because you know what, it's not okay to go on a racist tirade and be horrible to people and don't get so angry. Just like if you can't control your anger at a level that, like, I see a lot of these videos where these people are screaming and waving. Sorry, that's
Speaking of screaming,
that would be our baby being a tiny demon of cuteness. It's just anyway. So it's like, yeah, if you can't go out in public anywhere and just like not be crazy, like waving your arms and yelling at people and fighting with people, especially calling them like racist, epithets, then just stay home, call the therapist, stay home, and like don't participate in society until you can do so like the rest of us. Like, unless you want to lose your job, like, because I seriously have like no qualms at all with the people that are reporting this kind of thing, because like if we don't take action and report it, like it's going to happen to someone else, and,
certainly. I mean, obviously bad people are bad on or off camera, right?
Yeah, exactly. They don't deserve to exist in the upper echelons of any company that, may control something like you getting a loan or you buying a product or you getting hired or...
like what's going on in China with the whole social currency.
Well, that's just terrifying to me, but like that's another whole...
But like, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing, but not in an authoritarian type way. Yeah. We're doing it in a general public social... consensus kind of way.
The problem that I have with the China thing is, yes, it's like they have a communist-ish kind of, I don't know what to call it, government, but authoritarian is a pretty good example of like, or a good word for it, really. But like, not only is it about like just social media and your value as a person, where like you get like essentially like social points for different things you choose or don't do in your life, but it's also attached to like payment, like the company behind, like what did it started as, like WeChat. They now have WeChat Pay, which has actually come to North America as well, and
America's at Venmo and
but it's coming, just like AliExpress has Alipay coming, like it's here already actually. So it's like there's different ways even that we're going to pay for things, and at the end of this Thunderdome for me is I think about just imagine if your personality characteristics, not necessarily the things that you do that are really bad, like racism or whatever, but just the personality you have. What if one day that carries the value that actually impacts the food you can put on your table? Because, you're not, like, it's no longer about just your education and your work experience, but also about your social value. What are you doing socially? And I think we need to consider that some people have more time than others, some people have better mental health than others, and to think about like judging anyone when you only have a piece of the picture brought to you by media, I find that really scary.
Well, yeah, and that's what I find, it's the weird interplay of that, how we treat social media so flippantly, and how we can say things in less than 150 characters that are super inflammatory or totally mindless, and at the same time, people are judging us in a very real way.
Well, that's just it. I think it's like social media, we don't always think about it, but I think it makes everyone develop an impression of us that it's not, like I always look at it like, remember when you just loved all your friends because they were good to you and they were your friends, but then today you see them online and they might have, some opinions that you don't agree with, or maybe even more than an opinion, like a political belief that's harmful or something like that, and you never knew that about them. And I think like there's benefit, but then there's also drawback, because I also think that as a society, we've come to expect perfection from people, and not just in how they live their life, but like in how they react to every single topical event, social, conversation. Like if anybody makes a mistake, like if it becomes something that they get completely ridiculed for. Like, I'm not, like when I was a child, when I was a teenager, the concept of someone being transgender did not exist, right? So I had to learn, through many years and like researching this and studying it and talking to my friends, and literally learning about not only what being transgender is, but also the variances within what being a transgender person is and what that means and how it's different for different people. Because nowadays, if you're going to try to participate in a conversation, sorry, we have growling going on, you need to have a little bit more information so that you don't not offend people, but honestly hurt people, hurt their feelings, hurt how they feel about themselves. Yeah. Goodness, this is the baby podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and to bring more to your point, like, I mean, yeah, and the funny thing is that the internet is also this giant, vast resource of information for you to learn about people
and misinformation.
And things. Yeah, and misinformation on top of that. Yeah. And I think people are so quick to judge because there's so many things to judge in the world today. And I think people are so quick to judge because our algorithms are getting so accurate to paint a picture of who an individual is to target them with advertising. Yeah. And I think people take the same kind of notion socially towards their friends, their family, towards things, and become increasingly more dismissive.
Yeah.
Increasingly more, canceling people.
Well, and I think it all goes down to just the comfort that we've begun to feel on social media. We're so familiar with it. Mm-hmm. We're on it all the time. And, it's become something that, like, we're comfortable with, sharing, unfortunately, way too much, way too frequently. But that, I guess, is up to everyone to judge. Like, I think it's my statement is just kind of a general one. It's not about how much time you spend doing anything, but just in general, like, let's think about how our lives have changed. I think for me, I know, I've got to consciously tell myself a lot of the time, like, I'm only spending 15 minutes online, and then I've got to get doing something. Like, especially as someone who's, like, in my spare time, I have a second, hobby, and it's a business, and, it's about me making things. So, like, if I'm just sitting there, like, one example is, like, you can get lost sitting on Pinterest, just looking at inspiring things, or even Instagram. Like, the time wasting is amazing that you can do. Like, the time wasting is killer.
Yeah, but, I mean, we take a good chunk... Society at large takes a good chunk of time to do it.
So I think, I don't know, we should probably wrap this a little bit, because I think there's so much to talk about as it relates to the internet in general and just the social behaviors around it. But, to kind of wrap up back to where we started talking about the Stauffer case. The unfortunate truth as we end this episode is that basically this child still hasn't been, like, publicly, we haven't publicly heard that he's somewhere that's going to benefit him, that he's under the...
That he's actually safe or alive.
That he's under the eye of, the state or whatever, and... I have since we started talking about this, a bit of time has passed and we had to pause and come back to it. So as I end this, basically I understand that the investigation has been closed, and I don't think we will ever hear a whole lot more about this because it does involve a minor. I really hope the best for this poor kid, and it's a scary world out there. I've since done a little more research on just the common thread of people looking to rehome children that are internationally adopted, and this is not a unique story at all. And
Yeah,
I've
really
learned
sad.
some even more, as you can imagine, dark ends that these kids have ended up in. So I really hope that the world starts to evaluate how they decide to let children be internationally adopted, and that we start to consider children in the same way that we do adults, and we become a better society for it, because this isn't enough. This isn't good enough. So,
All right.
okay, well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks again.
And I know that this episode was like a little bit different. It was a little more opinion rather than like just the solid facts, but it was important to me because it made me sad and I wanted to talk about it. And I think it's an important topic about like just our use of the internet and how it can be messed up.
And what's going on right now in the world.
Yeah. Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye.
I taught you something.